You don't realize what someone truly meant to you until the silence replaces their presence. He didn't see it then. He thought she'd always answer the phone, always forgive, always stay. But love doesn't stick around forever when it's not seen, not heard, not valued. And now, it's not that she changed, it's that she stopped waiting for him to. Today, we're talking about what happens when someone wakes up too late. Let's get into it. He didn't realize her presence was a privilege, not a guarantee. In the beginning, she was there, fully. She made time for him, even on days she had none. That she remembered the little things he mentioned in passing and followed up as if they mattered. She showed up emotionally, mentally, and physically. She made him feel like he mattered, like he was worth the energy. And without even realizing it, he began to expect it. Her presence became the wallpaper of his life, comforting, familiar, and unnoticed. He never stopped to ask himself why she was so consistent. He didn't think about how much emotional energy it takes to be present for someone else every day. He didn't consider that being available isn't just a default setting. It's a choice someone makes, over and over again. He saw her kindness as part of the background. Her support became routine, and slowly he stopped reciprocating, not maliciously, not because he didn't care, but because familiarity breeds complacency. He started replying slower, putting in less effort to ask how she was feeling, forgetting how meaningful it was to simply notice her, to listen, to thank her. He assumed she'd always be there because she always had been. He assumed he could give less and still keep receiving everything. But love doesn't work like that. People don't walk away when they stop caring. They walk away when they realize the other person stopped caring first. And for a long time, she gave him the benefit of the doubt. She kept hoping the guy who had once been present, the guy who once asked questions, showed interest, made her feel seen, would come back. But he didn't, because he didn't realize he had left. So she started pulling back. Quietly, she didn't fight or make speeches. She simply stopped filling in the emotional blanks, stopped picking up the slack in conversations, stopped being the only one initiating, asking, showing up. And that's when he started to notice. But it wasn't her pulling back that shocked him. It was how different everything felt without her full presence. There was no more warm, "Good morning" text waiting. No follow-up about the interview he casually mentioned. No thoughtful gesture to remind him he mattered. It was like he was still in the relationship, but the air had changed. The light had gone dim. And for the first time, he realized those little things weren't little at all. They were her love, in motion. And now that motion had stopped. He thought she'd always be there, because she had been. But he forgot that consistency is a gift, not a guarantee. He forgot that being loved well isn't something you're entitled to. It's something you respond to with presence, gratitude, and attention. By the time he realized it, it was too late. He didn't lose her in one big moment. He lost her slowly, one ignored text at a time, one missed opportunity to connect, one, "I'll make it up to you," that never came. And now, sitting in the space where her effort used to live, he finally feels the weight of what he took for granted, not because she made him pay, not because she punished him, but because she stopped pouring into someone who never realized how much he was being filled. He thought her kindness meant she was easy to replace. That because she didn't start fights, didn't play games, didn't keep score, she must not be someone other people would fight to keep. He saw her patience as passivity. He saw her forgiveness as weakness. He thought, she'll always let it go. She's not going anywhere. But what he didn't realize is that real strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks like soft eyes and a steady heart in the face of disappointment. Sometimes it looks like choosing to respond with grace even when you're hurt. And that's exactly what she did. She didn't walk away the first time he disappointed her, or the second, or the fifth. Because when she loves, she gives people the room to be human. She believes in growth. She believes in communication. And for a while, she believed in him. She gave him space to get it right. She didn't nag. She didn't beg. She showed him a version of love that was grounded, calm, and powerful, not performative. But instead of appreciating that, he took advantage of it. He pushed boundaries just to see how far they'd stretch. He stopped showing up with the same effort. He gave less, knowing she would still give more. And each time she responded with understanding, he felt safer in his laziness, safer in his inconsistency, until he forgot that even the strongest hearts have limits. Even the kindest people get tired of being treated like a fallback plan. What he couldn't see is that her kindness was never weakness. It was restraint. She had the strength to react, to fight, to match his energy. But she chose not to. She chose the higher road, hoping he'd rise to meet her there. She kept showing him what it looks like to love with maturity. She kept giving him the opportunity to step up. But the longer he took, the more clearly she saw who he really was when he wasn't trying to impress her anymore. The mistake he made was assuming that just because she loved him deeply, she would tolerate being undervalued forever. That just because she stayed during the hard parts, she didn't have a breaking point. But kindness doesn't equal tolerance for emotional neglect. And patience doesn't mean someone is oblivious. She saw it all, the half-efforts, the delayed texts, the way he slowly stopped caring about how his words landed. She noticed when he started choosing convenience over connection. She just didn't always say it, not because she didn't feel the shift, but because she was watching to see if he would. And when he didn't, something changed in her. She started redirecting the energy she was giving to him back into herself. She stopped over-explaining, stopped overcompensating, stopped hoping. Because there's nothing more painful than loving someone who interprets your grace as a license to mistreat you. By the time he realized what he had, she was already reclaiming her self-respect. Not in a dramatic, explosive way, but in the quiet, powerful way only people with real emotional depth know how to do. She left with the same grace she gave him all along. And that's when he understood she wasn't weak. She was strong enough to love without ego, strong enough to stay and try, and strongest of all, strong enough to walk away when she realized her love wasn't being met with the same kind of heart. He had her, but his eyes kept wandering, not necessarily to other people, but to possibilities. What else was out there? Could someone else make him feel more excited, more powerful, more desired? He was constantly scanning for more thrill, more attention, more novelty, not realizing he already had something deeper, something real, but he wasn't grounded enough to see the difference. He thought having options meant he had power, that keeping one foot in the relationship and one foot in the fantasy would somehow protect him from making the wrong choice. What he didn't realize was that while he was busy measuring her against what could be, she was showing him everything that already was. She was consistent, loyal, emotionally generous. She brought peace, not drama, stability, not chaos. She saw his flaws and chose to stay. She poured into the relationship, believing that love was built, not stumbled into. But none of that looked flashy on the surface. She didn't come with games or mystery. She didn't play hard to get. And because he didn't have to fight for her, he assumed it meant she was easy to replace. He was drawn to the idea of the chase, to the unknown. He thought excitement meant value. He thought newness meant something better. So he kept her close enough to benefit from her, but far enough to keep his options open. He didn't commit emotionally, not fully, and she could feel it. Every time he half listened, every time he compared her to some imagined version of what love should feel like, every time he acted like she was lucky to have him, instead of the other way around. What he failed to understand is that value isn't always loud. Real love doesn't always come wrapped in fireworks. Sometimes it comes quietly, in someone showing up when you need them, in someone remembering your schedule, in someone caring about your emotional world when no one else even bothers to ask. She was all of that, and he traded it for a fantasy that never existed. He got caught up chasing highs and neglected the foundation being built beneath him. And by the time he noticed how rare her love was, it was no longer available to him. She didn't leave with a speech or an ultimatum. She just slowly disconnected. She realized she wasn't competing with a person. She was competing with his immaturity, with his fear of commitment, with his inability to recognize what matters in the long run. She stopped trying to prove her worth to someone who couldn't see it. And when she left, she took more than herself. She took the stability, the peace, the quiet comfort of being loved by someone who means it. Then came the silence, and in that silence, he started to feel the loss, not just of her, but of the version of himself that existed when she was around. He missed who he was when she believed in him, when she made him feel capable, loved, respected. He started to realize that the world is full of options, but very few of them actually offer substance. Very few people actually care beyond the surface. Very few stay when things get hard. Very few love without keeping score. He thought he had time to figure it out. He thought she'd always be there. Understanding, patient, willing to wait. But love doesn't wait forever while someone browses other shelves. She was never trying to trap him. She was trying to build something with him. But you can't build anything with someone who's too busy checking if there's a better deal around the corner. And now, in the quiet aftermath, he finally understands. He didn't lose her to someone else. He lost her to the version of himself that couldn't recognize her value until she was gone. She tried to hold on, not to him, but to the version of herself that still believed this could work. The version of herself that kept showing up, loving fully, and hoping he would eventually see her, not just notice her presence, but truly see her for who she was. She gave him chance after chance to meet her where she was emotionally, but each time she opened the door, he stayed at a distance. She didn't start by asking for too much. She didn't demand grand gestures or perfect responses. She just wanted to feel valued, to feel chosen, not just included. And for a while she convinced herself that he'd get there, that he was just figuring things out, that the emotional gaps would close if she just held on a little longer. So she stayed. And she kept giving, kept showing up with softness. Even when she felt like she was slowly fading in the relationship, she made excuses for the distance, for the things he didn't say, for the effort he stopped making. She told herself he cared, even if he didn't know how to show it. She filled in the blanks with hope. But over time, that hope became heavy, not because she stopped loving him, but because she started losing parts of herself in the process of constantly having to prove why she was worth loving back. She noticed when he stopped asking how she felt, when her needs became inconvenient, when conversations became shorter, colder, more distracted. She noticed when her excitement was met with indifference, when her pain was met with silence. But instead of pulling away, she leaned in. She thought that if she just communicated better, if she could explain her heart more clearly, maybe he'd finally understand. Maybe he'd finally care enough to meet her halfway. She didn't want to leave. She wanted to be chosen. And so she kept explaining herself, trying to put her love into words he could digest. But the more she explained, the more invisible she felt. Because it's exhausting to keep reminding someone how to love you. It's heartbreaking to keep spelling out your value to someone who refuses to see it. She wasn't asking for validation. She was asking for partnership, for someone to stand beside her, not watch from a distance. But he had grown so used to her giving more that he didn't notice how much it was costing her. She was emotionally overdrafting just to keep the relationship from collapsing. Eventually, she stopped explaining, not because she no longer cared, but because she realized that no amount of words could teach someone to see what they don't want to see. She stopped begging to be understood. She stopped editing herself to fit into his limited version of love. And once she stopped trying, she saw the truth. He didn't lack the capacity to love. He just didn't love her in a way that made her feel whole. She had been living on scraps of attention, mistaking them for effort, because she believed that love meant staying even when it hurt. Walking away wasn't the moment she gave up. It was the moment she remembered who she was before she had to keep justifying her worth. It was the moment she realized that love should feel like freedom, not convincing, like being seen without having to explain your soul every time. She didn't leave to punish him. She left because staying meant losing herself completely. And now he sits in the quiet she left behind, wondering how someone so soft could vanish so completely. But she didn't vanish. She simply returned to herself. And that's something no apology can undo. He thought he still had her because she was technically still around. Her number was still saved in his phone. She still answered his texts, though a little slower than before. She still smiled when they saw each other, still asked how his day was, still played along when he acted like everything was fine. And so, in his mind, she hadn't gone anywhere. But what he didn't see was that something had already shifted. She was there in body, yes, but not in heart, not in the same way. He confused access with intimacy. He thought just because he could reach her, he still had her. But access is surface level. Intimacy is about depth. It's about emotional closeness, vulnerability, shared effort. And those things had slowly started to disappear, not because she stopped loving him, but because she got tired of being emotionally alone in a relationship that was supposed to be mutual. She got tired of having to reach for someone who wasn't reaching back. She had been holding on for a while, hoping he would notice the difference between her being physically present and emotionally invested. But he didn't. He took her replies as signs she was still committed. He took her availability as proof she wasn't going anywhere. He saw the fact that she still showed up as a sign that things were fine. But he didn't ask how connected she really felt. He didn't notice the way her eyes didn't light up in the same way. He didn't notice how her messages were shorter, how her voice lacked warmth, how she wasn't as curious about him as she used to be. He assumed they were still close because they still talked, but the truth was, she had stopped letting him in a long time ago. At first, she tried to bridge the gap. She asked deeper questions. She opened up. She tried to create space for vulnerability. But over time, she realized she was the only one doing that. She was building the emotional connection for both of them, and it was exhausting. It started to feel one-sided, like she was chasing something that should have been natural between them. Eventually, her guard went up. Not in anger, not in spite, in protection. You can only open your heart so many times before you start to protect it from the cold. He still had access to her time, but not to her soul. And that's what he didn't understand. By the time she stopped caring enough to explain how she felt, it was already too late. Emotional disconnection doesn't always happen with yelling or slammed doors. Sometimes, it's the quietest moments that mean the most. When someone stops fighting for closeness, when they no longer correct you, when you misunderstand them, when they let the silence stretch longer than usual, when they let go in small, imperceptible ways. By the time he noticed the emotional distance, she had already begun grieving the relationship. She was mourning what it could have been if he had met her halfway. She was already healing from the version of herself that tried too hard for someone who didn't see the effort. And now he's left with the access she gave him, the phone number, the history, the memories. But none of it means what it used to. He can still reach her, but he can't feel her anymore. And that's the hardest part, realizing that you didn't lose someone in the moment they left. You lost them when they stopped feeling safe with you, when they stopped trusting you with their emotions, when they stopped opening their world to you because you showed them, over time, that you didn't know what to do with it. He thought love would wait, that no matter how long he stayed distracted, distant, or disconnected, she would still be there, waiting to be chosen properly. He assumed that because she loved him, she would always give him another chance, that she'd always be understanding, always forgive, always stay. But what he didn't realize is that love doesn't survive on hope alone. It needs effort. It needs intention. It needs to be felt nurtured and protected. Otherwise, it fades, quietly at first, then all at once. She didn't leave because she stopped loving him. She left because she started missing herself in the relationship. There came a point where the silence she kept inside became louder than the connection they used to share. Where the one-sided conversations, the emotional neglect, and the constant feeling of being almost seen became unbearable. She didn't want to become someone who begged to be loved properly. And even though it hurt, walking away was the only way she could return to herself. He didn't see it coming. To him, things were fine. Not perfect, but fine. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't threatening to leave. She still smiled, still made plans. But he wasn't paying attention to what was underneath. He didn't notice how much of herself she was hiding just to keep the peace. How many things she stopped saying because she knew he wouldn't listen. Or worse, would hear her and still do nothing. He confused her silence for contentment, when it was really the beginning of detachment. Then she was gone. Not physically at first, but emotionally. The sparkle in her voice when she greeted him was missing. The warmth in her eyes had cooled. She stopped asking deep questions. She stopped leaning in. And when she finally walked away for real, it wasn't with anger, it was with clarity. Because she had already cried all the tears, already played out the conversations in her head, already mourned the version of love she tried so hard to create with him. Now he regrets it. Not just losing her, but losing the version of himself that had the chance to grow alongside her. The version that could have learned how to communicate, how to show up, how to love in a way that actually meant something. But he didn't take that opportunity. He stayed passive. He stayed comfortable. And now he's left with the weight of knowing that he didn't just lose a woman. He lost someone who chose him daily, even when he didn't make it easy. He thinks about her now in the quiet moments, wonders how she's doing, who she's becoming. And more than anything, he wonders who she's with. Not just romantically, but emotionally. Who gets her attention now? Who sees her clearly, without needing reminders? And he realizes that she didn't leave to make him miss her. She left because she missed feeling loved. There's no satisfaction in that kind of regret. It doesn't come with closure. It lingers. Because when someone leaves with dignity, when they exit quietly, respectfully, without burning the bridge, it hits even harder. It leaves you with nothing to fight against, no drama to blame. Just yourself, your choices, your lack of effort, your silence when she needed your words. And that's the kind of regret that doesn't go away quickly. Because once you see someone glow without you, you're forced to admit that they never needed you to become whole. They just wanted you to be someone who wouldn't make them feel incomplete. And when you couldn't do that, they chose themselves. That's when love leaves. And that's when regret begins. We often assume that the people who love us the most will wait the longest, that they'll always be there, no matter how distracted we become or how little effort we put in. But love is not about presence alone. It's about presence with intention. It's about choosing someone every day, not just assuming they'll still be there tomorrow. He didn't lose her because she stopped caring. He lost her because he never fully realized the weight of her effort until it was gone. He thought he had time. He thought her silence was patience. But now, all he has are memories of someone who once gave him everything, and a quiet knowing that she left the moment she realized she deserved more. So here's the truth: love doesn't disappear in an instant. It slowly unravels when taken for granted. And if you're lucky enough to be loved deeply, fully, and with consistency, don't wait until it's a memory to recognize the gift you've been given. Choose them, appreciate them, show up for them, because one day, if you don't, you'll find yourself exactly where he is now, full of regret for what you didn't see when it was standing right in front of you.